Sorry, we're starting a bit late. We've been warned about today being a public holiday and the kind of footfall that we should expect, but it's quite nice to see so many people turning out on a holiday. I'm Srinivas Chokakula. I'm the President and Chief Executive of Center for Policy Research, and I also lead the TREADS initiative, which is hosting this lecture, which is Transboundary Rivers, Ecologies, Development Studies. This is an initiative at CPR, and as the Ministry of Jal Shakti Research Chair, which I'm going to tell you about a bit more, I lead this initiative, and it's a real pleasure to see so many people and quite familiar faces from the policy and research community joining us today. Thank you very much. That includes Dr. Gopinath, our chairperson as well. Welcome, ma'am. So, just before I invite the speaker today, Professor Asit K. Biswas, and other dignitaries onto the dais. I'm sorry we don't have dais. Apparently, we will not be provided dais unless IIC co-sponsors it. So, so we don't have dais. You could assume that this is itself is a dais. So before I invite the dignitaries, I just wanted to spend some time sharing with you about a bit more about TREADS initiative, which is hosting, and also set the context for the lecture today. So we may not be exactly following the time schedule that we have advertised. Just please bear with us. I'm just looking for my glasses. So we found this TREADS initiative when the Ministry of Jal Shakti established the MOJS, which is Ministry of Jal Shakti Research Chair at the Center for Policy Research in 2018. To my knowledge, this is perhaps the first ever research chair that was established out of the IIT and NIT system. And also something that has been mandated with policy research. So if you ask me, and I keep saying it, how did it happen? I keep responding saying that it is because of a set of conducive constellation of forces. We had this visionary secretary, and we had this chairman, Central Water Commission, which is Mr. Pandya, the then chairperson. We had these people, and they thought about establishing a research chair, looking at the research that we were producing at CPR, and thought that we could contribute to this particular area, which is somewhat, received less attention over time. So this is something that it's quite interesting because the Ministry of Jal Shakti was also, had the research chair had the Central Water Commission itself as the collaborator for this research chair. So, over time, we had done some very interesting research. We engaged with these contemporary policy questions, and we, in collaboration very often with the Central Water Commission, we took up certain research projects that received extensive traction. Even though it was a short period, it received extensive traction within the policy circles as well as the public discourse. And to the point that we could directly engage with the ongoing public legislations that were in making, which included the Interstate River Water Disputes Amendment Bill. It was introduced and passed by the previous Lok Sabha in 2021, I believe. Now that you have a new parliament in place, I guess we hope that it would be reintroduced, and we look forward to continuing to support the ministry in improving this legislation. And over time, the kind of engagements that we have taken up, in fact, turned TREADS initiative itself is a kind of very important deliberative forum where the contemporary policy questions in water sector are discussed, debated, and informed the policy thinking at the ministry. We did very often in collaboration with Central Water Commission and other institutions within the Ministry of Jal Shakti. We had organized these events like Round Table of States to discuss interstate river water governance challenges within the country, and also a Round Table of River Boards to talk about what kind of approaches do we need to take to conceptualize a policy ecosystem and institutional transformation to support interstate cooperation within the country in pursuit of the goals that are there, and in the larger rubric of India's long-term water security. And this, the research that we did, we also sort of addressed some very vexing questions, like, for instance, should the Supreme Court engage with interstate water disputes at all? You know that the Constitution provides for barring the jurisdiction of the courts, including the Supreme Court, to engage with the interstate water disputes. And we did what I would like to call a definitive commentary on whether the Supreme Court has to or should engage with interstate water disputes. So that kind of research brought us quite a bit of visibility as well as credibility. And as a result, we ended up signing an MOU with the National Mission for Clean Ganga. And there are those who considered that it is worthy of signing MOU. They are here. Mr. Rajiv Ranjan Mishra is here. And after that, Mr. G. Ashok Kumar, now joining us as a senior fellow, who supported us under this MOU. And TREADS is, the MOU basically aims at pursuing a research program to inform policy thinking as well as institutional transformation for not just rejuvenation of Ganga, but also rejuvenation of India's rivers. So that's where the key in terms of the challenge, in terms of how we translate the experiences that the ministry has been accumulating in implementing the Namami Gange program. How can we sort of distill the lessons and inform the policy thinking about a policy ecosystem for rejuvenating India's rivers? So I would say, in all humility, the TREADS initiative at CPR is not the best in terms of promoting their work. So yet, you would see some. We are changing because we have got now a fairly resourceful, young, lean team working with TREADS initiative. You must have collected a leaflet describing the TREADS initiative and the kind of research questions that we are interested in. And also the kind of plans that we have in the future. So just look out for an exclusive website, treads.org.in, treads.org.in, which is in the making. The reason why we wanted to build it as an exclusive website is because we aim at building a knowledge portal that would become a single point reference for research on transboundary water governance in South Asia, including interstate river water governance within India. So that's the kind of goal that we had set ourselves, that would also showcase the TREADS work that we have been doing and continuously would share it. So some of the books and publications that we have produced, they are on display along with Professor Biswas' publications, today's speaker. So just to quickly, I'm coming towards sort of promoting TREADS initiative, if you want to call it. TREADS initiative, just wanted to remind you about the fact that this initiative builds on a very rich legacy at CPR. If those people who follow CPR would know that since 1980s, CPR has hosted a whole bunch of great minds and thought leaders who have been working on water sector since 1980s. And if you look at the kind of body of work that they produced, I cannot think of it, in all humility, I cannot think of any place that has produced that kind of body of work that has shaped thinking within the policy-making circles as well as the public discourse about water policy in general, but particularly transboundary river water governance, and then how the transboundary water relations shape this South Asia region itself, and how we need to pursue the kind of development potential that we have within the South Asian region, and what kind of regional architecture would support that kind of relationship building within South Asia. And I still have to see a place that has produced that kind of body of work at one place. So it basically builds on that kind of legacy, TREADS legacy, TREADS initiative, and we aspire to live up to that legacy as we go. So quickly to set up the context for this talk, many of you know that the Government of India has constituted a drafting committee for drafting the national water policy, revisiting the existing 2012 national water policy. I thought when it was constituted, I had the honor of serving on it. When it was constituted, I thought that was perhaps the most brilliant step that was taken, partly because I would attach a very important, a lot of importance to the timing, because it was after 2012. You have this UN's SDG goals that was articulated, and we had set an agenda to achieve it by 2030. And then it was also the time when the government has announced very ambitious goals in the water sector, whether it is about river rejuvenation or inland navigation or interbasin transfer. And the more important thing, I think, if you talk about climate change consciousness within India, I think you can mark it to post-2012. I thought it was a great idea to revisit 2012 national water policy, considering all the kind of new challenges that are emerging. So I looked at it as a huge opportunity for India to pursue its these ambitious goals that it has set itself. While it's yet unfinished, as you know, the national water policy, it is still under consideration. That is the best that I could put it. While it is the case, government has started talking about the Vision 2047 for Viksit Bharat, a developed India. Now, when you want to talk about Water Vision 2047 for Viksit Bharat, you need to figure out, you need to have the kind of policy that we are talking about, particularly because there was, after the 2047 vision was announced, there was an All India Ministers' Conference with the state ministers to talk about the Water Vision 2047. Now, it has not been fully articulated, but we would assume that it is a water secure vision, because without water secure vision, you can't talk about India as a developed nation. So the ministers' conference came out with 22 strategic directions that they would like to pursue. And then after that, it was followed by All India Secretaries' Conference in Mahabalipuram, which discussed and deliberated about how to pursue these strategies with various kinds of functionaries, water resources departments within the states. Now, Professor Biswas will tell you about it, a bit more on it, but we all agree that strategies are not going to be sufficient. It is about formulating policies, it is about setting institutional mandates, it is about allocating budgets to support pursuing these policies, and and the kind of it's about designing programs and plans to achieve these goals that we are talking about, which is water secure India under the larger goal. Now, and you must have seen it in the abstract, Professor Biswas basically insists that those kind of policies and the kind of institutional mandates or the restructuring would need to be deeply contextual and located and grounded within the Indian context. It's not going to work if you want to transplant some of those practices that you want to bring in from other places. So that is the reason why it's extremely important that we need to start deliberating about the kind of policy and governance pathways that we need to pursue this water secure India. So that's the kind of backdrop within which we thought that we would have this lecture on this Water Vision 2047. And we are deeply grateful to Professor Asid Biswas, who has kindly agreed to deliver this lecture. And you know that he's universally acknowledged as an authority in the water sector and beyond, and his work over the past several decades has influenced debates and discourses globally about water resources. I just wanted to, with these remarks, before I invite Professor Biswas to deliver his lecture, I'd like to invite the dignitaries that we had listed on the program to come onto the dais. And before that, I request Mr. Nalin Srivastava, who is here, the Deputy Director General of National Mission for Clean Ganga, to welcome them with a felicitation. We've got our team members here. Right. So some of our team members didn't like the idea of the female team members bringing in with this felicitation material. So they insisted that it has to be men. So now here we go, team members. So can I invite Professor Asid Biswas to come? Thank you, Mr. Nalin Srivastava. Sir. Can I request Mr. Pandya to come over and occupy the dais? Before that, sir, if you could. I mentioned this to you. Mr. Pandya was earlier chairman of Central Water Commission and now Secretary General of International Commission for Irrigation and Drainage. For those of you who are not familiar with ICID, please know that it is just next door to CPR and was founded by the person who negotiated the Indus Water Treaty. I don't know if I need to say it, but I think that's how it's often known. In fact, little less known that it is the person who founded it, Mr. N.T. Gulati, was the one who founded it. Can I now request Professor Cecilia Totiada? Cecilia is the editor-in-chief of International Journal for Water Resources Development, a journal that we all aspire to publish in. She's a professor of practice at University of Glasgow. We requested her to, share her reflections after the lecture. Now, can I request Mr. G. Ashok Kumar, former DG, National Mission for Clean Ganga, now Senior Fellow at Center for Policy Research, to come over and join us. Thank you, Mr. Srivastava. And particularly for joining us today evening. I know that your son is not well yet, to take time off and then help us in doing these honors. We are really grateful to you. Now, just to quickly introduce Professor Asid Biswas. It's very difficult to introduce. If you look at it, I'll read it and you will know why I say that it is very difficult to describe his contributions. And I will also sort of close it with a personal touch there because of his long friendship with CPR. But, Professor Asid Biswas is universally acknowledged as one of the world's leading authorities on water, food, environment, and development-related issues. He has a very distinguished career as an academic, senior public official in Canada, advisor and confidant to presidents, prime ministers, and ministers in 23 countries, 6 heads of United Nations agencies, 2 secretary generals of OECD, and several heads of bilateral aid agencies, and 4 CEOs of chairman of MNCs in Fortune 500 list. And you see that it's a blend of rigorous academic work and practitioner understanding. He has worked and lived in all continents except Australia. I wonder why. He was a member of World Commission on Water and co-founder of International Water Resources Association and World Water Council. He was a member of Global Agenda Council of World Economic Forum and is currently member of International Advisory Board, Pictet Asset Management, Geneva, and member of Advisory Board, Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, and Strategic Advisor, Singapore International Water Week. Among his numerous awards are Crystal Drop and Millennium Prizes of the International Water Resources Association, Walter Huber Prize of American Society of Civil Engineering, Stockholm Water Prize, which is considered a Nobel Prize in water sector. And while getting this prize, the Stockholm Water Prize described his outstanding and multifaceted contributions to global water resources issues. And Person of the Year award from Prime Minister Harper of Canada, Aragon Environment Prize of Spain. Reuters named him as one of the top 10 water trailblazers of the world. Impeller magazine selected him as true global water hero. Because of his manifold research contributions, he has received 7 honorary doctorates of technology and civil engineering from leading global universities, including from both University of Glasgow and University of Strathclyde. He has a H index of 55. Google Scholar lists 935 of his publications. With over 7,000 citations, he has a ResearchGate score of 42.1, which puts him in 2.5% of the all scientists from all disciplines from the entire world. He is the author or editor of 89 books, widely read, not just books that are produced, but widely read. His work has been translated into 43 languages. Professor Biswas is the founder of International Journal of Water Resources Development and was its editor-in-chief for the first 29 years. For those young scholars, and some of us, we still aspire to publish in this journal. He's a regular media contributor to BBC, CNN, CNBC, TRT, Project Syndicate, The Conversation, Channel News Asia, MediaCorp, and China Daily on issues related to natural resources management, climate change, environment, geopolitics, international relations, business strategies, and innovations. His opinion pieces in various international media are now read by some 1.74 million readers annually, all over the world. Now, putting all this great credentials of him, and you know that it is truly an honor and privilege to have him, he's a long-time friend of CPR. I mentioned about this rich legacy of CPR scholarship that shaped the policy trajectory within this country. And Professor Biswas was part of that legacy. In a way that, that CPR has always been a place where ideas and policies for the nation that mattered to the nation are fiercely debated and discussed. Now, there was a point when this anti-dam, India could boast about having been the place where the global discourse on dams was shaped because of the kind of long, protracted movement against dams, against particularly the Narmada Dam. And that was when it's at the peak of this Narmada Dam agitation. And you had, typically to CPR's character, you had scholars, Jain scholars, on one side, Ramaswamy Iyer, on another side, B.G. Varghese, and Professor Rangachari, who is here with us today. They had this regular opposing views, but trying to find a middle ground. And that is when Professor Biswas stepped in and commissioned a study on Bhakranangal to showcase the kind of positive impacts of building that kind of storage structures. To my knowledge, I don't think we have had that kind of book, at least with an alternative perspective to the dominant perspective about social and environmental consequences around dams, since that book that was produced by Professor Rangachari. So he was there at that time to come and support, and also he was the one who supported these studies on transboundary water governance in South Asia region. And now he is here again with CPR, perhaps at its most difficult times. And he is here to support us. He's eager to help out TREADS initiative as well as generally CPR, Center for Policy Research. And we thank you for that, sir, for considering CPR to be a place that should be supported and continue to be supported. And with your guidance, we look forward to building this TREADS initiative and to live up to that legacy as well as to live up to the kind of support that we are receiving from you. And I'm personally thrilled to have him deliver this lecture, partly because my own thinking and approach was shaped by his work. And that's no big deal, partly because an entire generation of scholars globally were influenced by his work, were informed by his work. His work shaped their own trajectories, who have now become giants. I'll just give you one example. Professor Aaron Wolf, someone who is a kind of whose seminal contributions in transboundary water governance defined the trajectory of that scholarship, that body of scholarship. He happens to be my mentor, who is based out of University of Oregon, and I was writing my dissertation from University of Washington, Seattle. He was my mentor at that time, and Professor Viswas was his mentor. So you see how, and I would like to just appeal to him, sir, please know that your work has shaped scholars of more than one generation, and here is an evidence in front of you. And I'm sure your work will continue to do so for the generations to come, and we thank you for that. We are honored and privileged to have you, sir, and thank you again for agreeing to deliver this inaugural lecture. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Srinivas, for that very generous introduction. In fact, listening to your introduction, I was wondering, is that me? And if that is true, what on earth I'm going to say, I'm dying to hear myself because of your introduction. What I want to do with you, first I want to thank you. It's a holiday, and for coming, all of you to come here to listen to me and hear some of my views and perhaps biases. My father used to say, son, when two people agree on everything, be sure only one of them is doing the thinking. Okay? So if you differ with me, I have no problem. But we want to have a civilized discourse. Why you are differing? What's the reason for it? Now, the topic, after discussion with Srinivas, is Vision 2047 of India. Of course, Niti Aayog will come out much more detailed program from my understanding in December, but we know now some of its objectives. And objectives of Vision 2047 is to transform India's economy and GDP. And currently, India's GDP is about 3.41 trillion, and the Vision 2047 expects it to go up to 30 trillion, almost 10 times the current GDP. Per capita GDP by that time, by 2047, is expected to be, or the objective is to make it between 18 to 20,000 US dollars per capita GDP by 2047. Now the first question you might I ask, is it possible? Is it possible to do that? My answer is, we have examples of countries which have done that, even exceeded that. But it's very difficult, it's challenging, it needs a new way of thinking. Old way of thinking will not do. And here I had the privilege of one of my early mentors was a remarkable Indian lady. I'm sure all of you have heard of her, Mrs. Indira Gandhi. I remember when I was the director of Environmental Systems Branch of the Government of Canada, in 1975, I was in Delhi. And I had tea with Mrs. Gandhi. She was then the Prime Minister. And she listened to me. And she said, with like an elder sister chiding the younger brother, he said, when I listen to you, I think you think the sun and the moon and the planets revolve around water. But I have to tell you, and that's what she said, I'm quoting her verbatim, I have to tell you, as Prime Minister of India, I have absolutely no interest in water. So if you want to discuss water, I have no problem. We'll discuss other things, personal things, and I want to find out how you are doing. So every time you come to India, you come, we'll have tea together, but we won't discuss water. And I said to her, how is it possible, Mr. Prime Minister? You are not interested in water. Human beings cannot live without water. You cannot produce food without water. You cannot generate energy without water. So why are you not interested in water? And she said, and this has guided me throughout my life, changed my life completely, the way I looked at it. She said, as a Prime Minister, my main objective is not means, but what are the ends? So I asked her, what do you mean by ends? She said, by end I mean, how do I improve the quality of life of the Indian people? How do I improve their standard of living? How do I create employment for Indian people? That is what I want to do. Now, if you want to discuss water, my secretary will be happy to make an appointment with the water minister, and I assure you, when he knows you are coming from my side, he will put out the red carpet for you. And I told her bluntly, I have absolutely no interest to meet with the Indian water minister or discuss water issues with the Indian water minister. I want to discuss it with you. She said, if you want to discuss with me, fine, then change your attitude and view. And she said, think about how water could be a catalyst for regional development. How can you use water to generate employment? How can you use water to improve the quality of health and the standard of living of Indian people? If you want to discuss that way, that is fine. And she pointed out, next week she was going to give a lecture, and at that time it was Ministry of Irrigation. They had prepared a lecture for her, a speech for her. And she showed me the speech, and she said, it says, from independence we have created so many hectares of irrigation. We have created so many gigawatt or megawatt of electricity. And she said, I have no idea what 1 megawatt of electricity is. Does it light 10 houses, 1 village, 10 villages, 1 big cities? I have no idea. I have no idea what it means to increase the irrigation. What does it do to food availability? How many people get food from that? When I asked my people, they said many of these things they can't explain to me. So I learned from there that if you want to get the attention of important people, we have to frame our water issues in a different way. And since then, actually, I'm a civil engineer by background. I lost my engineering background, and I tried to look water from a policy perspective and a higher perspective. And that led me to a completely different group of people than I would have had I been only a simply civil engineer. Now I mentioned countries, developing countries, how they have done. In 1965, when Singapore became independent, per capita GDP was $516. $516. Now, if you look at Singapore's per capita GDP, it's probably the highest in the world, $88,000 US. So if Singapore can do it from 516 to 88,000 US, surely with a lot of effort, India could do it as well. It won't be easy, but can be done. Singapore's growth has been, economic growth during this period has been annually 7%. Can India, last year, India's growth was 7% GDP. Can it maintain that level or even higher level? Because by the time Vision 2047 is agreed to, there will be little over 20 years to implement it. So you have to go like a very super fast express to achieve it. In 1980, also another thing that happened to me, Deng Xiaoping, then the head of China, invited me to come to China to look at south to north water transfer scheme. And when I went in 1980 to China, China's GDP, per capita GDP, was 70% of that of India. India's GDP was much higher than China. Well, I want to show you what has happened since then. The GDP in 1980, remember, China's was less than India's. And now take a look at this map and what has happened since then. Right now, the GDP of China is 4.5 times that of that of India. 30 years of above average, double-digit growth has completely revolutionized. So can India do it? Yes, it can do it. It has the expertise to do it. It has the capacity to do it. But whether it will be able to do it or not, it's a big if. Now, one of the things that will happen is if India is to do its Vision 2047, two things it must look into very, very carefully. If per capita GDP is to reach $18,000 to $20,000 by 2047, don't expect to have plan and everything and expect that water will be available. What is happening in the world all over is the plans are made. And by a miracle they expect water will be available of the right quantity and quality. There is no discussion with the water profession or the water ministry saying what are the preconditions that are necessary. Energy, what type of energy will be necessary to support a GDP per capita of $18,000 to $20,000. I'll give you one example, just one example. None of us expected, even as late as 2020, none of us in the world expected that climate change will have such a major impact on the world. Okay? In terms of extreme events, like floods and droughts, in terms of temperature, Delhi had 40 days of about 40 degrees Celsius this summer. Believe me, 5 to 10 years' time, you wish you had 40 days of only 40 degrees Celsius. It's likely to be much higher. Okay. Now what is happening in a country that is rich with oil, rich with per capita GDP like Kuwait? What's happening in Kuwait? Right now, Kuwait's temperature has gone above 50 degrees Celsius. Okay? Electricity demand is so high that Kuwait is now forced to have blackouts by evening, okay? Because the demands are so high. So the Kuwaitis are complaining that as an oil-rich country, lot of oil, they don't have enough electricity. Even now, forget about what happens in the future, to provide air conditioning to the people. Studies in China indicates, the one we have done indicate that when per capita GDP goes $10,000, roughly $10,000, air conditioning becomes widespread. Now, if India's GDP goes to $10,000, think what will be its energy requirement just for cooling. Forget the other industry, etc. For cooling, it will skyrocket. So you can't have an economic plan without starting concurrently how we will provide the water and the energy for the people. Right now, India's water management is in a crisis. There is not enough water. In fact, anytime I come to India, I open the newspaper, any newspaper, whether in a state or the national newspaper, there are several articles every day on lack of water, too much water, like flood, or water quality, or a whole variety of articles on water. So water is now slowly permeated into the populations, but we are still not planning properly for it. Srivastava mentioned interstate water disputes. What is happening in India? All the major rivers are fully allocated. I think only one that has excess water, to my way of calculation, is Brahmaputra. I don't think any other has much water left to be done. So, if the India's industrial requirement is going to go up, India's agricultural production is going to go up, where are we going to get the extra water? And my thesis always has been, not only for India, but for the rest of the world, including some of the Gulf countries whose ministers tell me, the minister, I advise many of the ministers there, the minister from Qatar, Energy and Water Minister, tells me, we are a water poor country, okay? We need to desalinate all the water, and we have a real water problem. I said, really? You have a water problem? Which country has the highest per capita consumption on water? Number one is Qatar. An average Qatari who does not pay for water, the expatriate pay only O&M expenditure for water. An average Qatari uses 700 liters of water per capita per day. 700 liters, okay? I don't know what they do with it. That's another question, okay? They don't know either because they don't measure it. Now, that's not enough. They lose 1/3 of the water from the system. So to provide 700 liters to Equity, add 1/3 more, and you come to almost 1,000 liters per capita. So they have to produce 1,000 liters per capita per day so that the poor Kuwaiti guy or the girl can use their allocation of 700 liters per day. And I told the minister, you are telling me you have a water problem? You are using water like a drunken sailor, and then you are telling me you have a water problem. You don't have a water problem, you have a water management problem. The same I will say to India. India does not have a water problem. Not only now, but even at 2100, when the Indian population will be estimated now to be 1.7 billion people, India's economy will explode, because if you are going to get 18 to 20,000 per capita GDP by 2047, by 2100 it will be much higher. And the global perspective has been, on a percentage basis, every country, agricultural share of water on a percentage basis is declining. Industrial water requirement is going up. Domestic requirements is remaining almost very similar. One problem in India, real problem in India, I've been finding out, lack of information, lack of data for the water sector. I have asked my Indian friends, can you tell me what percentage of water is being used by the agricultural sector, what percentage by the industrial sector, and what percentage for the domestic sector? It depends whom I ask. I get different answers because there are no official figures or estimates. We need to have an information system of water availability, use, how it is used, and quality. I mentioned Singapore before. Singapore public water system now monitors 347 water quality parameters regularly. 347. How many water quality parameters does Delhi Jal Board measure? I have no idea, but I'll be surprised if it is more than 30. And even with 347 water quality parameters, Singapore is not they're looking at what to do in the future, but they have not included many major issues, water quality issues. Like one of the major issues now is microplastics. Microplastics now, we are finding out mother's milk now has microplastics, but we don't know what it does to the child growing up. We are eating things with microplastics, but we don't know what happens. No country I know now puts microplastic in as a quality parameter. PFAS, these permanent chemicals, you use Teflon. Now they have stopped in US. Nobody measures the PFAS. When I graduated, we were talking in 1960s from IIT Kharagpur, my professor was talking about parts per thousand, water quality parts per thousand. Now, we have the technology to measure parts per million, parts per trillion. But we don't know what those minute quantity of water, of pollutant, does to the human body. We don't have the methodology, how does it affect our health. We don't know how to do that. When we talk of microplastics, parts per trillion, we can measure it. PFAS, we can measure it. But what we don't know, what could be the good for human limit. There are some fundamental questions we have to ask in India, for example. How much water does an Indian need, to average Indian need, to lead a healthy and productive life? The Indian norm says for the urban sector, 130 liters. For the rural, 55 liters for the rural. But the average water needed for a person to lead a healthy and productive life, does it differ by urban area, rural area? I don't know. Neither does anybody, because we have never done any study. Before doing 130 liters norm that is put out, did anyone do a study on long-term study? How much water do you need in Delhi to lead a healthier, productive life? Even if you get 130 liters minimum, which under the current you get free 130 liters, assuming a family of 5, is that enough? Too much? Only study done in this area, only study in the world I have found out that did serious study how much water a person needs to lead a healthy and productive life was done in Singapore between 1960 and 1970. And they looked at primarily from the health viewpoint. How much water does it need so that the doctor's visit, hospital visit, doesn't make any difference above a certain limit. And this is the only study that's available in the world. They came to the conclusion about 75 liters per capita per day, it has no impact on health. No visible impact on health. Okay? Now we have many European cities that are coming per capita consumption to 80 liters or less. So the question we need to ask is, are these norms we are using without question, which you are saying 130 liters minimum for urban areas, 55 for rural areas, do they have any scientific validity? Or they are numbers plugged out of the air by some person somewhere, and that is it. 130 liters is a reasonable round number, that's it. So we have to ask some fundamental questions which are not even asking ourselves. Now, let me share with you what I mentioned, Singapore and China. I will add 2 more countries to that for India to learn from. In a different sense. One, for example, you would think is a leading in the world. If I tell you Windhoek, the capital of Namibia, an African country, has been treating wastewater for the last 60 years, treating it, then put the treated wastewater direct to their water supply, and last 60 years they haven't had any health problem. Okay. So Windhoek in Namibia is the world's leader in reuse of water. A developing country, less expertise than in India, less technical support than India. If Windhoek can do it, I'm sure India can do it. Here we have the expertise, we have the knowledge, we have the money. The second example I want to give you is Phnom Penh. Phnom Penh in Cambodia, capital of Cambodia. Okay? It's an interesting case, Phnom Penh. Phnom Penh municipality, Phnom Penh Water Supply Authority, does not get 1 cent of subsidy from the Phnom Penh municipality or the government, because the government is broke. They cannot provide any financial support. So in 1993, Phnom Penh was losing 73% of water, the water supply, 73%. If you are lucky in the right area, you got 15 minutes of water a day, 15 minutes of indifferent quality. Okay? And PPWSA was corrupt. The Director General who used to get water of Phnom Penh Water Supply Authority, and because he was the Director General, he used to get free water, and he used to sell all the free water to his neighbors. Corruption from top to bottom. Then 1993, Hun Sen appointed someone who knew nothing about water. Nothing about water. And his task was to put PPWSA, Phnom Penh Water Supply Authority, to provide 24/7 water of good quality. In 1993, as I said, they're losing 73%, very little. This man, who knew nothing about water, realized that water supply is not a rocket science. It's a very simple what you have to do. You have to find out where the water is coming from, who is using it, how much, and what is happening to the system. And get rid of corruption. By 2000, PPWSA was becoming not only self-sufficient in financial terms, but already providing 24/7 water, drinkable all the time. Okay. Right now, its unaccounted for water runs to between 7 and 8%. When I look at Delhi, its non-revenue or not unaccounted for water, by all accounts, seems to be about 50%. Okay. So my question is, India, with more expertise, more managerial capacity, more knowledge, and better funding capacity, why the Indian cities cannot provide 24/7 water that can be drunk straight from the tap. First time I went to Phnom Penh in 2006, the thing that impressed me is in the Director General's office, there was no bottled water. No bottled water. He had a carafe of water, and he drank straight from the carafe. Okay? All the staff of Phnom Penh water supply, you won't see bottled water anywhere. And his thesis was, if the water quality is good, why do you need bottled water? Okay? So, I'll suggest take a look at Phnom Penh, how to provide water. There are a lot of examples in the third world countries who have done remarkable job on providing clean water to the people. Another example I'll give is Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo's water supply system, Sabesp, is 51% owned by the private sector. No, 51% owned by the government. 51%. So majority is owned by the government. 49% by the private sector. But the rule is, even though government owns 51% of the water, it's the private sector that determines who is going to be the CEO of Sabesp. Private sector. Because they realized if we leave it to the government, not the best person is selected, but who is politically well connected or whatever it is, but they are not going to do that. And I'll make one suggestion. If you want to solve the water problem of Bengaluru or Delhi or any of the megacities of India, if you make one change, at least 60% of the problems will be solved with the same budget, with the same expertise. And what is that change? the institutional change I suggest to do, and I've been completely unable to convince Indian politicians to make that change. The average stay of the head of Delhi Jal Board, average, is 18 months. Average stay of the Bengaluru Jal Board, Water Supply Corporation, another mega city, is even less. For whatever reason, I don't know. 13 months. The person comes, they are IAS officers, very intelligent. I have nothing against IAS officers. But no one coming from an external sector, knowing your stay is going to be average of 18 months maximum, or in Bengaluru's case, 13 months, by the time you find out where even the toilet is for the new man, you will find 4 to 6 months is gone, just to understand the system. By the time you make a plan to what you want to do, your term is over. You are gone. The next person comes and it continues. So if India can make one simple change, choose, if you want an IAS officer, I have no problem, but give that IAS officer minimum of 3 years stay with distinct KPIs, performance index, that if you are going to stay in this position, first year you should reduce your non-accounted, non-revenue water by so much, provide water, etc., but give some concrete and then evaluate that person's performance. Singapore does that. Singapore's PUB, the Public Utilities Board, the chief has a 3-year stay, but his performance or her performance is meticulously observed by the Civil Service Commission to see how that was done. Very transparent. So, and if that person's performance is 3 years, then it is he or she is given 3 years more, 6 years maximum. If India can do that one single institutional reform, 60% of the domestic water problem will be solved. Nothing to do with water availability. So we need to rethink how we are managing our water. Now, I want to show how the Chinese are making a difficulty. Now, as I mentioned, I've been heavily involved in China. I visited China at least 100 times. They respect my opinion, they seek my opinion because I'm not involved in politics. I don't give a damn what your position. When the final meeting I had with Deng Xiaoping, he asked, you saw the south to north water transfer. I had 30 Chinese experts with me. And said, what is your opinion? I said, Mr. Deng, if I were in your position, I wouldn't do that. He was surprised. He knew the government, I knew the government has made a decision that they are going ahead with it. Okay? They thought I will come and bless the project, said, it's a great project, please go ahead. So he was very surprised. I was supposed to brief him for half an hour. I stayed there for an hour and a half. His assistant came, he just waved him away. And we had a big discussion. He said, why? I said, the answer is very simple. First, the cost your people has given is $9 billion US. I have used the figures they're given by the Chinese experts, and I'm already at 36 billion. And I've not included everything. Okay? So the cost will be nowhere near 9 billion, but at least figure on 50 billion. Second, it will take more than 30 years to complete it. You'll have problem for 30 years. And in any case, you have to start very seriously demand management, which you are not doing. Okay? So if you do demand management, then much of this will disappear, need for disappear. And so Deng looked at me and then said, Professor Biswas, I fully agree with you, but I think we have to go ahead with the project. And he explained why China has to proceed. So the answer is very simple. He said, people in China and outside China think I am the supreme leader. Whatever I say goes. But I know what happens in China. The rich provinces will do exactly what they want. They won't tell me what they're going to do, but they will find one excuse or another to do the water transfer. I can only influence the poor provinces because they don't have the money. They come to center. They follow what the party says you must do. So he said, from China's viewpoint, I'll rather have one unified project than the rich provinces doing ad hoc project, whole series of ad hoc projects which has no philosophy. So he said, for that reason, I'll do. And then I said, the cost will be high. And he smiled and he said, you know, we play a game in China. The engineers think we don't know anything, so they want the project to be approved at 9 billion because they think if the price is realistic, politically we will not approve it. And then 3 years later, they will come with excuse, we have to increase for this, that, and other reason, we have to increase. 3 years later, another increase. So he said, I know they're playing a game. They know they're playing a game. But it's a game we play. And this is how the Chinese system works. And now look what has happened in China. They had 3 routes for water transfer from north to south. My job was to identify which was the best, one of my jobs, which I did. But they decided that all the 3 routes should be undertaken at the same time. Okay? The cost is well over 100 billion now. It's two is completed. But the thing is, from 1980 to now, each succeeding government has provided the funds on time without any difficulty. No problem. They got full support. Now, if India's vision 2047 is to be realized, there are several fundamental requirements in my view. First, you must have a strong political support. Strong, consistent political support. I've been looking at India for a long time. From my perspective, India had 2 prime ministers who actually gave emphasis on water, only 2. You may differ with me, but that is my view. And as my father says, 2 thinking persons don't have to agree. So you can disagree with me. I take no offense. First was Nehru. He was interested. He was the architect of Vakranangal, Hirakud, many of the large dams that happened during. And it was he who said, these large structures like Vakranangal are the temple of modern India. Okay. Second is the current Prime Minister. He's the only one who has been focusing on a lot of water, many water-related issues. Okay. Cecilia, I have been fortunate to know the Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore. He explained to me once that when Singapore became independent, he realized if it has to survive and thrive, water is going to be the main issue. Main issue. And he said he put in his office 3 very well-known water people. And all Singapore's policies, industrial policies, urban policies, every policies, and he said, had to bend in the knees for water. because if they did not satisfy the water criteria, whatever policy that the other ministries did, they were completely vetoed, out. And he put into a place how can Singapore become independent of water. Singapore had 2 water treaties with Malaysia, one expiring in 2011, the other in 2061. And because they were getting water from Malaysia. When the 2011 treaty about to expire, Singapore said, we don't want to renew it. And Malaysians thought it was a negotiating tactics. Okay? But what the Singaporeans done in the meantime is improve their water management so that they don't need those extra water. By 2061, they're hoping they won't need any water extra. Their industry will develop. Already their per capita GDP is $88,000 US. It will be even higher. The water requirements of industry will double by 2061, but they all need for water from Malaysia. So, example I'm giving you is all these are possible. Vision 2047 is possible, but the government must look, the planning people must look, how do we manage our water so that the quantity and quality of water is there. And now let me share with you some of the things the Chinese have done. I'm not saying you follow Chinese example. In fact, you cannot follow Chinese example. And I'll give you my views. This one, look at what they have done with the water requirements, with the industrial water requirements. Okay, to 10,000 RMB of production, they have reduced their water intensity already very significantly, and they're going to reduce it even further. Okay, so India has to follow. It has to follow its own way, but you have to figure out how do you make less intensive use of water for industry. If you look on the agricultural side, which is China's major user of water, the last 10 years, per hectare consumption of water has gone down by 19%. 19%. And they plan to reduce it even further by 2030. Without sacrificing yield. In fact, the yield has gone up by 30 to 40%. So at the one hand, they have reduced water consumption, and the other hand, they have increased their agricultural production very, very significantly. Okay? So if I could have the... These are just to show the comparison, and I'll tell you how they did it. This one I want to show you is how the world is becoming water intensive. Okay? Google, which has some of the brightest scientists in the world and the well-paid scientists, in 2020 said by 2030 they would be carbon neutral. They made a commitment. By 2030 it would be carbon neutral. What is happening? Then they found out the need for data center became so immense that the water requirements for cooling went to the sky. So their carbon emission between 22 to 23 actually went up. Even their best estimates they had done with that it would go down. Same with the Microsoft. So what I'm saying is, India wants to go on the specialize on the wafer industry. Chips production, high quality wafers. Remember, production of wafers needs very high quality water, very high quality water, even higher than domestic drinking water by far. So if you have to have a chief or a industry, wafer industry in India, though nobody thinks about the water requirements. We build the factory and somehow by miracle water will come. That will not happen. And India is giving a great deal of attention to information technology, IT. Water requirements of those are going to be immense. So yes, it can be done, but it has to be planned very, very carefully. Now, why I want to share one of my views. Why did China succeed? And in India, we are not succeeding in water management. Why? Main reason is in 2000, Chinese leaders made a commitment. They said, all the development activities must respond to Chinese way of living, Chinese culture, Chinese technology, and Chinese political system, and Chinese institutional system. Okay? So immense amount of money was spent to look for water management with Chinese characteristics. I am sad, very sad personally, that because of geopolitical issues, rest of the world does not know the advances China has made in the water sector the last 20 years. They're simply fantastic, simply unheard of. We have, in India, we have water quality problem. Everybody knows the quality of water is done. China divided its water quality into 5 areas, 5 gradings. 1, 2, 3 are reasonable. 1 is good water, quality number 1. Number 5 is the worst, grade 5, what they call grade 5 water. Grade 4 water is equally bad, but not as bad as grade 5. None can be used for human use. Okay? Once they decided that water pollution is a very serious issue, by 2025, China's grade 5 water will disappear. There will be no grade 5 water. 85% of grade 4 water will disappear. And the reason for all this is the focus, how do we develop water management with Chinese characteristics? Do you know what they did? I would have never thought it would work. They had a lake which was extremely polluted. And they wanted to clean it up because it provided water to one major city. They tried everything they could. They reduced a little bit, nothing happened. Then they tried one simple method. They said the highest party leader of the region would be given the responsibility of managing water quality of that part of the lake. Okay? So the top party person was, and he was told, or she was told, it's mainly about 85% of their men, they were told that China has a very meritocratic party system. If you want to go from head of a small town to a head of a medium-sized town, you have to go up by your performance indicators. So all these people were told, political staff were told, that if you don't look after that part of the world, that will consider 25% of your performance, then you had it. Forget going up, you might be fired from the job. Okay. Including the top party man in Beijing, Shanghai, from there they go to the Politburo and all those higher positions. They were told, if you don't clear up Beijing's air pollution, water pollution, you are in problem. You are down. Not only you are out, but forget about going up. So they tried this lake. It worked extremely well. They tried a few other places. It worked equally well. So now China has a new group of people. They are the top political party in that area, from town or major city, and they are called river chiefs. River chiefs system. Okay, it could be river, it could be lake, it doesn't matter. The top political party man is responsible. His or her responsibility is only that part of the area he's responsible for. Forget integrated resource management, integrated water management, water resources management, which the Western world has pushed, and sadly, we are giving it at least lip service, saying it is doing. Forget IRBM, integrated river basin management. It can work in a Chinese context because it's very hierarchical, but it is things are there doing. But now 1 million river chiefs are working, and their job is to clean up China's water by 2030. So what I'm saying is we have to start thinking about India. How do we develop water management with Indian characteristics? What are Indian characteristics? I just want to throw out a few for discussion. I have not looked at it very seriously, but few you have to think. One, unique center-provincial relations in water. Okay? China is a hierarchical society. Once decision is made, layer by layer, their job is to do that, follow up that decision. China's Yellow River Commission works extremely well because they have the money, authority, forget the provinces, they are responsible for Yellow River, to manage the Yellow River. They have the power, they have the authority, they have the money. Okay? India, you can't do that. You can't set up a river basin organization because water is a provincial response. You know it better than I do. So the question is, that is one of the India's requirement. The second part, let me share with you. Even before climate change became such an issue, about 15 years ago, I did a quick study, back of the envelope study. And I compared the rainfall in Delhi and London. The annual rainfall in Delhi and London. The difference is about 15%. Okay? Delhi gets 15% less rainfall. But the study we did, that remember this is pre-climate change days. %80 of the annual rainfall in Delhi, 80% of annual rainfall in Delhi fell in 90 hours, 90 hours, not consecutive, but within the monsoon season, within a few months. So we are following European style of water management. There's nothing, Marco, wrong with Europeans. It does very well in Europe, but it's a different climate. And now the rainfall is becoming even more skewed, even more intense. So the question is, with that type of rainfall, immense rainfall, how do you catch it? How do you harness it? Okay? Again, when I look at any monsoon I come to India, either Delhi or Kolkata or Mumbai, I find part of the streets heights blocked. These are average monsoon, irrespective of what happens. Okay, if you have an intense monsoon, you have a problem. Okay, I heard this year, British newspapers reported part of the Indira Gandhi airport roof collapsed. Okay, but why is it a country that has in that type of skewed rainfall has such a poor drainage system, surface drainage system? If I I have walked through only a part of Delhi's road just to see what is the spacing of the, forget the cleaning of the drain, that's another issue. Okay, desilting is another issue. The spacing of the drain, and I compare it to Singapore. Both are monsoon country. In Singapore, at least every 50 meters, there is a big opening of the drain, at least. And here we don't have that. Why is that? We know that the monsoon is coming. Every year monsoon is coming. Why can't we prepare a drainage system that is conducive to Indian conditions? So those are some of the things we need to do, and how do we develop water management techniques now and for the future for the Indian conditions, and not try to copy what the international community says you must do. So my request to you is start thinking about how do we solve this problem. We're discussing wastewater treatment plants, okay? If you look at the design of the wastewater treatment plants, we are following the British style. And one of the implicit assumption, if you really look at it, one of the implicit assumption is there is no evaporation. Okay? It's okay for London. Evaporation is not much. So for the 2 or 3 days of retention, evaporation is not an issue. For India, in Delhi, with 40 odd degrees temperature, evaporation is not an issue. We have to look at our design practices which are taken for granted. Which sedimentation in the rivers. We are following the formulas that are based on the Mississippi River that was done 40 years ago by the American scientists. You read any textbook, they will give you formula, but are those formulas valid for the Indian context? My answer is no. Everybody takes the sedimentation, Einstein sedimentation formula, not ask any questions because everybody is using it. But if we are going to use sedimentation in the rivers, then you have to develop your own equation based on empirical factors. We saw what happened in the Aswan Dam. And I asked Richardson, who is one of my friends involved with the preparation of, they decided that sedimentation after erosion, sedimentation after the Aswan Dam erosion will be about 7 to 8 meters, the bed. In reality, it was less than half. And when I asked him why, he said the answer is very simple. We used the formula we had devised for Mississippi, and then we found out Nile is no Mississippi. Okay? Ganga is no Mississippi. Brahmaputra is no Mississippi. But we still use the same formula as that were developed. We don't even question anymore. So we need to ask ourselves, how do we manage water for an Indian context and Indian specificity? So if we ask these questions, we have to revise our water management, in my view, and I'd argue with anybody. My view, you have to develop your own equations in a way of management and not use many things that come from the Europe or North America, not because they're not good. They're good for European context. They're good for North American context, but they're no good for the Chinese context. They're no good for the Indian context. That's why Chinese are going their own way, and we have to go in India our own way to develop it. I don't see any effort or any sustained effort to do that. So if I have to leave one message today, that will be my main. Please, you have brilliant brains in India. Try to use them in the universities and research institutions. how do we develop water management techniques in an Indian context with the Indian institutions and the Indian climate, which will be very different to European or North American. So this is what the Chinese did, as a result of which they have made remarkable difference, not because they're more brilliant than Indian scientists, because the politicians realized there that unless they do it with the Chinese context, all these, instead of IWRM, as I mentioned in China, they are going to disintegrated water resources management, and it is working better than IWRM in Netherlands or anywhere else in Europe than the Chinese are finding out their own way. So this is what, in my view, if Vision 2047 is achievable, will be very difficult and challenging, but we must think about some enabling conditions like, will there be enough water, right quantity, right quality? What do we have to do? Because automatically the water will not come out of the sky when you need it, wherever you need it. Rivers are over-allocated. Same question, energy. Tremendous increase in energy, where they will come from. And in addition, India has made a commitment that by 2070, country will be carbon neutral. So how do we manage water resources, energy resources, and still be carbon neutral? It can be done. It has to be done. And for Vision 2047, my view is very simple. For the Indian people, it has to be done. It should be done. It must be done. But it's not going to be easy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I was looking at the clock, and I know that we are past the schedule that we have allocated ourselves. Yet, I don't see anybody moving anywhere, not even from one place to another. That's an indication of what kind of wisdom that Professor Biswas' lecture offers us. Now, without wasting much time, we have two of the eminent, one a scholar and the other practitioner. I just wanted to get a quick reflections for them. Since we're running out of time, maybe perhaps you could consider reducing it to a little less than 10 minutes, perhaps 5 minutes each. So can I first request Mr. Pandya to share his thoughts about Professor Biswas' observations.
Thank you, Srinivas. And friends, it will be actually preposterous for me to try to paraphrase what Professor Asit Biswas said. So please excuse me for that. One thing that I got the underlying principle was that to achieve a hard goal, you need to achieve a very thorough management. And water management is a practice which has been severely missing with us. We have done a lot, but then beyond doing that lot, consolidating that lot, not much has been done. We need to have a national consensus on the paradigms that we want to adopt for our water management. And that paradigms will have to be acceptable across the political and social boundaries. This is another takeaway that I got from such a eminent lecture. And that is why the institutional change is a must for the improvement and defining the key performance indicators, which will then allow us to really go and achieve that goal in the manner that we are really thinking. And he touched upon a very, very important part of the characteristics with which the climate is presenting to you, the topography is presenting to you, and you have to manage your policies, your approaches will have to be in line with that. So there are many ideas that may be floating around, but then which are the ideas that needs to be chosen, which are the ideas which are needing to be expanded and then taken up seriously in order to complete our work. These conditions are something that is very important. Like I also use that word, that basically it is the hydrological context that determines the water management. If you are not in tune with your hydrology, if you are not in tune with your agroclimatology, your management practices are going to be more anecdotal and less systematic. And if you have to go for 2047, it will be the systematic practices that will take us forward and take us over there. So, in brief, these were the takeaways that which I felt that we must adopt. And as water professionals, it is our bounden duty to keep the country aware about this. If we don't make them aware about this, we will be told that we are like Sahadev Joshi, we are knowing everything, but never spoke. So thank you very much. It's a very brief, but I thought that these are very, very important thoughts, and perhaps we will have to continue reflecting upon the ideas that he has thrown to us regularly in order to come to some further advancements. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Can I now request Professor Cecilia to share her thoughts?
Thank you. We started with a vision, which is what all the governments put forward. We have a vision as citizens, we have a vision for our children. And behind the vision, or to sustain the vision, are the institutions that should have a mandate, it's not only finance, but the support of the government, the support of the population. And very much that is what is missing. For the vision, we need the paradigms that Mr. Pandya mentioned. And these paradigms are many times so disconnected from reality. And we put forward paradigms that will never be achievable. And years later, we go back to is that we couldn't achieve it when from the beginning was necessary. And something I learned was the questioning. Is that what we want to achieve? Is that what we should achieve? And how to get it? And finally, I would like to finish this very brief intervention with what Singapore uses as the governance paradigm, which is the think ahead, think across, and think again. So you look to the world, you look to your future, you look to your vision, to your population. What does increase in GDP mean? What does this mean in terms of institutions, of capacity building, of investment, of monitoring, of checks? And then you think across. So you see what has been developed in the world, in your own country, in different places, because this is from where we learn. And then we rethink our vision. We modify it as necessary, and this is the think again. So for our vision, we need this, looking to the future, looking to what we have, to what we should aim, and how to achieve it. And then question it as many times as necessary, precisely so that it responds to our context. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Cecilia. We will give about 10 minutes for any questions from the audience. Perhaps 3 or 4 questions. Oh, I see plenty of hands there. Yes, sir. And then Marco.
Sir, this has been an absolute privilege to listen to the insights that you've shared. It's absolutely the clarity and the way forward, the way you've described. It was really nice to get examples from so many countries of what are the paths that they've taken. My one question was, sir, like when you gave an example of Namibia and how wastewater is being utilized and the fact that it's, over the past so many years, they've shown the way. Are there any examples, sir, of civil society? Because most of the examples that you've given of what could be replicable are all coming from the government of initiatives done by the state. And, India-specific methods can be used for the government. But any examples, sir, that you could share with us where it's more of civil society and, not the government, but they've done great stuff which is really engaged to bring a transformation for water. If you could share one or two such examples, sir.
I have not done much work with the civil society per se. My work has been primarily with the governments and the industry. Are there any examples? I'm quite sure there will be very good examples, but I am not the right person to give you that.
So on the industry, as you said, if you could share some of the industry examples that you feel could be replicable.
For example, one of the chairman of the board I advise, Nestle, the world's largest food company.
Microphone, please.
Thank you very much. I've been relaxing on my chair. Nestle, when Peter Brabeck was the chairman of the board and I was his advisor, decided take a very simple policy change, and that is the cost of water. And Nestle, for investment purposes, decided, irrespective of, they have now factories in 91 countries, irrespective of what the factory is, the cost of water per cubic meter will be, for their investment purposes, will be the same as in Vevey in Switzerland, where the headquarters is. Take India, for example. They're getting water free. But for their investment purposes, they have to use the water they will charge in Switzerland. Now, when they put that simple process into practice, what they used to do, as you know, Nestle is a big producer of powdered milk, condensed milk, and baby milk. They realized to produce those milk, they were evaporating the water, it was escaping to the atmosphere. But when they used the Vevey cost, they found out it is actually cheaper to catch the condensation, catch the evaporation, condense it to water, and treat that water for their factory. Now they have a factory in Moga now, in Punjab, which uses zero water from the environment. The milk that they were evaporating, that was going to the wherever it was, just water vapor disappearing. Moga factory is now run by milk contents 87% water. So they are catching that water and making it. That Moga factory is not only self-sufficient, but also it produces extra water which they're using for their gardening and other purposes. And they have used, now they call that zero water factory in Mexico, California, now going in China. They're going to, all their milk factories are now going to be zero water factories. They're producing many other things for which they need water, but Moga now does not use any water from the environment. So I'm just saying, industries, some of the enlightened leaders of industry, they are changing the industrial scene in the area of water. Unilever, another large corporation I advise, they have reduced their water consumption per ton of production by 40% during the last 15 years. Okay? So we are seeing in the industrial sector remarkable changes that some of these leaders are doing. And their senior people are rewarded both financially and in terms of promotion if they can reduce their energy consumption, water consumption, solid waste production per ton of production that is used. So they have completely revolutionized how it is being run. Unilever, Cicely and I saw used to clean their factory with high-powered hoses. Now, when they wanted to reduce their water production, they came out with a machine to clean their factory floor every day, which uses 2% of water than by high-powered hoses. So the major industries are making important savings, at least international corporations that have been doing. So those are remarkable advances that are happening. And more such industries, we need them to understand that water, because they realize Nestle has been around for 140 years, and they want to be around for at least another 40 years. Not only around, but they want to survive and thrive. And they realize water is an important component for their survival and thrive. So once they realize that, they look at how to do it, and the equation changes.
It's Mr. Marco here, please. And then we can go to, yes.
Thank you, Professor Biswas, for this very informative and incredibly surprising for me picture you gave us worldwide. Sorry. My question is very simple one. In your opinion, do you have the impression that the results that have been achieved by the Chinese government are somehow have been so positively affected by the fact that they are an ancient nation? I mean, they have a long history of a long awareness of being a nation. I make the example of Italy, for instance. I come from Italy, and we have the same situation. Many of the things you were saying apply directly to Italy. Surprising as it may seem, if we make the comparison with Spain, which is bordering us, Spain is the fourth or fifth nation now per capacity plant for desalination capacity and reuse. Italy is very far away from this, but still we share the same basin, we are in the Mediterranean, different countries, different histories. Spain has been an empire. Italy has always been conquered. And my question is, India is very recently, in 1947 has been gaining independence from the British. So do you think there is a component in these difficulties that many countries around the world, of course not only India, are facing in adapting, as you were saying, local, and as Secretary General Ashwin Pande was saying, adapting the features of the particular environment we are living in formulas and water resources management. Do you think there is an historical, let's call it heritage component in facing these difficulties?
Historical component is always there. Culture is always there. And the problem is, how do we, for example, India had centuries of British colonialism. How do we get rid of the colonial mentality and the colonial way of doing things? My guess is, for example, the surface drainage in India is still dictated by the textbooks of the surface drainage based on UK, and the two are very different, and that's why we're in such a mess. One of the reasons we're in such a mess. Yes, you're absolutely right. Spain is now getting desalination way. And the other thing, I didn't have time because there are many things. One of the things, Marco, now is we underestimate the future development of technology in the area of water. Now, Chinese, I know China because I've been advising the Chinese government. The biggest arch dam in the world, they completed in 4 years. 4 years. Okay? Shenzhenkou Dam, which will be completed next year, will be the tallest dam in the world, 310 meters high, 314 meters high. That will be completed in 5 years. 2 years of planning, permission, construction, 7 years. How long we are taking in India to construct a dam? They're using artificial intelligence for transportation of cement to trucks, etc., movement. They don't rely human anymore. They're using AI. The one of the Fortune 500 Dadu River Hydropower Authority, whom CEO we advised, in 2020, their hydrometeorological department of the Hydropower Authority said there's going to be immense rainfall in the upper catchment in 2020. And they forecasted that will contribute to at least a 100-year flood in the basin. Once they did that, immediately what they did is the authorities started emptying the reservoir. So when the flood came, it was about a 110-year flood. Most of the flood water was stored in the reservoir. Downstream, it was just an average flood. Okay? But use of terabytes of data, sound system, camera system, artificial intelligence they're using, this Dadu River Hydropower Authority, they don't want to advertise or say what they are doing to the world or anybody else. They're 10 years ahead. The floods are not a problem for them anymore because they can forecast, they have time, because rainfall now we can predict with certainty 7 days in advance. And WMO estimates by 2030 we should be able to go to 10 to 11 days in advance with complete or very certainly we can say what's going to happen the next, now 7 days, it will go to 10 to 11 days. Now, if you have a good department, forecasting department, artificial intelligence, sensors, robotics, things will happen. Those will be things of the past. So those we are seeing now tremendously. And the other thing we are going to see is the marriage between domestic water supply and IT. If you ask me, when I first heard this, I said, what is common in domestic water supply and provision of internet facilities? Well, a startup has already served and then trying it out in different places. Every house is connected with a pipe, okay? You have a pipe connection to your house. Their thinking is very simple. Can we put fiber optics? They started for a different reason. Fiber optics, sensors in the and the IT infrastructure within the pipe. Okay, so you charge, you get a revenue stream because you are providing the support. Many places in India doesn't want to charge for water. In Delhi, first 130 liters for 5 families free. Where is the revenue going to come? So they are now starting a new revenue stream so that water supply pipeline will provide the IT facilities line within the line, and it goes straight to your house. Okay? It never occurred to me until we saw it, and they are now no longer in a laboratory stage. They have used it now in British Columbia and Canada very, very successfully, and they are now using it in Morocco and Albania. So there are technologies that's coming out, and the other one we are going to see tremendous difference next 5 years. There's a foundation called X Prize Foundation. You may or may have heard about it. Both Cecilia and I advised them. They are now providing a prize for desalination. which will be large scale and cheap. And you know what is the prize? This will be the highest award, any prize, 119 times that of Nobel Prize, 190 million US dollars. With whichever company that comes out in the next 5 years, the cheapest way of desalinating, large-scale desalinating water. Now think about the potential. If we can reduce the cost of desalination, India has a large coastline. According to the World Bank, 60% of the world population live within 40 kilometers of the coast. Yeah, okay. So if you have a cheap way of desalination, and the $119 million is a lot of award, and all over the world now, it started from the first year. We are trying to encourage Indian startups as well to come and compete for this. So we are underestimating the technological developments that are likely to happen the next 10 years. What they would happen, some of the things they're thinking of, they're mind-boggling. I would have never thought somebody will think about using water pipes to provide internet facilities. But when I looked at it, you don't have to dig up the node. And what also they're doing is they're putting fiber optics sensors so that from the noise of the lake, by linking noise and the water flow, they can pinpoint exactly where the leakage is happening, how much it is happening, so which are the big leakages, they can pinpoint within a few meters. So you don't have to dig up the whole thing to see what it is. And so those are some of the things that are happening. We will see more and more technological developments which will revolutionize. The question is how countries like India can adopt them quickly, technology adoption.
Right.
So I am reasonably optimistic of world's water future. I'm not the one who says we're having water scarcity. No. We are having a management problem, but with good management practices, we can solve our water problem, not only of India. Vision 2047, forget 2047, I can say 2100, India does not have a water problem if we manage our water right.
Right. Quickly, I'm so sorry I was facing here, looking this side when I was looking for raised hands. There were these that I was missing. So we'll come back to you, Professor Gosain, please.
Thank you so much, Professor Vishwas, for that wonderful lecture, really insightful. So that I find in your lecture that there is an appeal to move beyond the European knowledge or the modern knowledge of water management and, to move towards, let's say, the indigenous knowledge of water management. And I see this argument in continuum to what Professor Mihir Shah has been advocating, although the national water policy is not out for us to see and debate about it. But whatever articles we have seen coming from Professor Shah, there's an emphasis again on the indigenous knowledge of water management and again traditional water bodies. But sir, in all these arguments, I find a contradiction, which is again the contradiction of modern political economy. The market and the infrastructural business, particularly, let's say, for example, in Delhi, there are 1,044 odd water bodies. But again, you see 80% of these water bodies at the verge of extinction or degradation because the market do not want these water bodies but want land. So, I see this contradiction between the logic of the market and then whatever we are advocating as in the knowledge apparatus that we are thinking of. So how do you think that these both can sustain together, and how do you think that, indigenous knowledge would have space in policies about water management?
Right.
I'll quote my father again. I strongly disagree with Mihir Shah. I make no bones about it. I have also problem the idea of Central Water Commission, his idea of dismantling Central Water Commission. If I was in power in India, which I am not, if I was advising powerful people in India, which I am not, I would double the budget of Central Water Commission, double. Restructure it completely. Central Water Commission, in my view, and Gopalakrishnan and others, and my friend Pandey, they know much more about CWC than I can ever hope to. my view of without Central Water Commission, India's water management would be even worse. But the institute should have been reformulated, restructured with a new focus by at least 1990. If I have to do, again, where I disagree with Mir Shah, indigenous knowledge is fine. But indigenous knowledge comes from old times. When the population of Delhi, I don't know, Delhi didn't even exist probably, okay? Now Delhi has, as a area, a number of population, all the projection is by 2050, Delhi's population will be 40 million, okay? There is no indigenous knowledge that can support 40 million people, which all developed with a small group of people in small areas. So I, by all means, learn from indigenous knowledge, but remember the world has changed. The conditions have changed. And so if you get enamored of going back to indigenous knowledge and just use it without thinking, you are going to be in big trouble. And I had problem with the Indian very senior politicians who wanted to talk about rainwater harvesting. Fine, rainwater harvesting is fine, it can be done, it should be done. But why do you talk of rainwater harvesting only in an urban context? Dams are rainwater harvesting. To me, large dams are rainwater harvesting. A country like India, you have to harvest rainwater by any means possible. Small scale, like you are saying, catch the rain where it falls, fine, we need that. We need medium structure, storage structure, large storage structure, small storage, all types of storage structure, which are absolutely essentials with this climate change we are seeing. So I have difficulty with Mr. Shah on many of his concepts. So again, we are all thinking man, so we can agree to disagree. But this is my personal theory, and as a scientist, I have no problem saying that I disagree with you. But I don't take it personally, because if I disagree with you, we are arguing over issues. It's not I dislike you or I have problems with you. And the real problem I find in this modern world is if I disagree with somebody, they take it personally. I am arguing with ideas. If I had disagreed with Marco, I say, Marco, the best I had was one assistant executive director, assistant secretary general of UN, whom I never met at the time. We went to a meeting. For 1.5 hours, we argued like cats and dogs. 1.5 hours. At the end of that, he put his arm around me. He said, enough discussions. Let's go and have a beer and talk things we have. And that's the type of people I want. We have solid discussions. Please don't take personally. You disagree with me. I disagree with you. We are disagreeing about ideas. You tell me why you disagree. I will listen to it. The first time I went to see Lee Kuan Yew, I was told he's a very tough man. There are many people who went, and after 3 or 4 minutes said, I'm wasting my time. This meeting is over. Okay? So I didn't know what to expect. We know he was a remarkable man. So Cecilia, I went to see him. After 10 minutes, I was very, very respectful, very deferential at the beginning. At 10 minutes, he said something. And as a scientist, I could not stop before I started, sir, I have to disagree with you. You could see his body stiffen, okay? Because nobody has told the great man that he disagrees with him probably for the last 30 years, because he's like God, okay? He said, why? I said, 1, 2, 3, 4. He said, you have a point. I agree with 1 and 4, but I don't agree with 2 and 3 for the following reason. We had an argument. After 1.5 hours, he said, look, there are many things we wanted to discuss. When can you come back again? Okay? And I said, sir, I'm available anytime. You tell me when. He said, can you come tomorrow? Parliament has a meeting on finance. It will be over by 4 o'clock. I might be 10 minutes late, but in the meantime, my secretary will give you a nice cup of tea. You just relax and have. But he never took it personally. And the reason he said is because he as any intellectual person, he likes to argue. But nobody had the guts to tell him that he disagree. So this is what I would like to tell my friends. If I disagree with you, it is not because I dislike you. We are arguing about that. But in the modern world, I think this is not working.
Thank you, sir. Professor Hussain.
Thank you much. So, Professor Biswas, it was a very nice lecture. I have some comments, not the questions. I fully agree with you that things which work in China won't work in India. That's true. And you also raised a question that we have the information which is the key to any management. So I'd like to share with you that we have been doing at IIT Delhi. Our group has produced the digital twins of all the basins. We are every day simulating the whole country using the rainfall forecast of IMD and providing the flow forecast not only in the monsoon months but otherwise also doing the hydrological simulation, which also has huge other parallel outputs. Like you raised the question that do we know how much is the benchmark for various crops? How much without relaxing on the yield can you provide the right amount of moisture at the right time? And also it can also simulate what is the nutrient and the other inputs which are required so that you can reduce the non-point source pollution. So that we have been doing. Only difference is that in our country, I'm sorry to say, there's no interaction between the institutions, the academic institutions, and the organizations which are doing the management. We have been showing this to all the required organizations, but there's no taker. This has been put as a website, on the website. So every day we are issuing that. It can go as a very good farmer's advisory. And this we are still doing as a part of our initiative. Because I personally feel that in the water sector, you need an integrator which can look at the various integration of the scales when you're talking of the local city is part of some basin. When you're looking at the total issue of flooding, it can be riverine flood, it can be local flood. So you have to bring all that in a manner which is a reliable information, and that is what we are already doing for the country in various ways, maybe to a level which is within our limitations. And I feel that is the only way, because our motto is to really share this information in a manner which is understandable by a layman, so that we can, in a democracy, that is the only thing which can happen. I can presume that if we put a pressure which is societal pressure, once people know that this is what is ailing them, why the flooding is not happening, why is happening in Delhi in different parts, what is the reason? So that is what we are trying to do. And even this last flood which happened, we analyzed on our own when the flood came in Yamuna this time. So it was declared that Yamuna is having 9.5 lakh cusecs of water which has flown, which was totally wrong. The level had gone up, and you are using the same old rating curve, and you are reading that with the level and saying that this much discharge has gone past, which is not the right thing. So we created information and then shared it in one of the seminar. And I feel that is the way it can be done. You have to create the benchmarks for the industry, and I'm sitting on some of the FICIs and as well as CII, the juries which are giving the awards for water stewardship. industries are doing quite well. I get many cases where they are saying that they are zero level now. They have already reduced their water intake to a level which is just close to the benchmark. But main thing is to do something for the guzzler of our water usage, which is irrigation, which is the agriculture. And that has to be integrated with the climate change implications, where you are not going to sustain the rain-fed agriculture in future, where you have to provide some supplementary irrigation. So I think those are the issues which we keep on providing these kind of information wherever is possible. Thank you.
What you are doing is wonderful, and just let me tell you how China is doing digital twinning. The ministry itself has done the digital twinning with the universities. Ministry, not that you are doing in isolation. The ministry went to the universities and said, we need digital twinning of all the basins and everything. They're all now functioning well, and they are being used for making decisions and planning decisions. You don't have to go and tell them, we have, yes. The linkage, this is most people don't realize, the linkage between academia and the research institution like CPR with the government in China is very intense. Before they do any policy, they commission umpteen studies by the universities and research institutions, and only then they decide what to do. So the academics have a remarkable impact in a Chinese context. I don't know how to do it in an Indian context.
Right, thank you, sir. So sorry, I think that should be the last question. He has been raising for a while. So we are already past half an hour from our scheduled time.
Oh, yes. Good evening, Professor Biswas and other panelists. Yes, we had a nice review of the event by this gentleman. Now, bringing a question back to you again, you mentioned that you had a comparative study of London and New Delhi pre-climatic days. How do you set a benchmark for climatic days, climate change days, and pre-climatic days, the natural days? And the other question that you said that Brahmaputra is the only river in India which is flowing as per the desired volume. What is the desired volume? Thank you.
Not the desired volume. What I said, it is one of the rivers which water is not fully allocated. Yeah.
The other question about?
The other question was about
post-climate change.
The benchmark for climate change.
I have no idea. It is for you guys to do it. I did it 15 years ago out of interest. So you do the studies now, look, and you decide what is happening. My guess is it will be even more intense. But I have no idea.
So all right, we'll try my best. Thank you.
Yes.
That is a topic for your either master's or PhD.
Sure, I'll try my best.
That's it. I think we need to wrap up. So sorry, sir. I think can we just wrap it up? The very small question, quick question. That should be the last.
Sir, as you said that you cited the example of Delhi, the capital of India, that 50% of water in Delhi is unaccountable or non-revenue water. Because the present government in Delhi is giving free water 20 kiloliters per month to every household, which calculates to what 130 liters per person per day. So in India, actually, the issue is that water is a state subject. So, I mean, it's a political question. If it can be made transferred to concurrent list or central list, then will it be, I mean, because the state governments are playing with it and they are giving free water, free bees. Every election, this is announced.
That is not a simple question, sir. So, anyway, that's...
This is my observation and a question also, if it can be done. Thank you.
All I can tell you is the Indian states will fight tooth and nail to keep their privilege, what is under the Constitution. I don't think there's a hope in hell that the provinces will agree that water becomes a federal jurisdiction. I don't think.
We have the Water Act of 1974, which is the Pan-India Act, And that itself can be modernized. It's an anachronism.
Sir, I think that Water Act is for pollution, preventing pollution. But anyway, that's not the question.
But that's something that can be.
But please respect we said that that is the last question, so you can talk to him later. Yeah, right, sure. Thank you.
Just a
Thank you.
comment.
Sir, would you like to,
No, nothing else. All I want to say is thank you for a holiday, spending so much time. I didn't expect for you to stay a couple of hours.
No, we still haven't finished the program. We have, so sorry, just please hold on. We have closing remarks. In fact, I wanted to say a bunch of things, but I don't. I should not. We are already past 8:30.
And it's already very late, so but then I think.
Mr. Ashok Kumar, please. Thank you.
I know I'm very much aware of the time, so I'm maximum 5 minutes. I will not take more. It was, sir, which is very interesting. You brought in a lot of issues. The dream, but then, sir, we should have a dream. So that's the dream of the Prime Minister, which to have a 2047 achievable goal. And as you rightly mentioned, over the years we have seen many people, the Prime Minister Nehru looking at water as a very important subject. And then over the years, I can tell you, we had lost the value of water. We had lost the importance of water. So water was never a priority item. And then now I find that in the last maybe 10 years or something, the water has gained its importance. And first time, Ministry of Jal Shakti has been formed. And a lot of other things have happened. And working on the river rejuvenation, working on giving water supply properly, improving water quality, etc. is happening. So one or two points I would like to mention, sir, which you took was you actually have touched upon a lot of things about the corruption. Water actually Ganga bahti hai. That's what people will say. Paisa Ganga ke taraf bahte rehte the. A lot of places, water boards are known for corruption. There is a short tenure where people cannot actually get things done. There are places where we tend to blindly copy the West, whether it's in technology or in management. Absolutely, there's no accountability in most of the places. These are all issues which we have touched upon, and probably these are things probably if we can address this vision of 2047 will be realized. One very important thing, and I use this phrase 5 Ps. To have any policy succeed or any particular dream in a large country to realize, first we should have political will. So as things stand, there is a strong political will. Whether the next governments would continue it for next 20 years is to be seen. But then people are become more aware. So this political will, I hope, will continue. The second very important would be the policies. Policies, as you rightly mentioned, it has to adapt to the situations. We can't have a policy of 2008 or 12 continuing here. It has to evolve, and new things are coming out. Water, climate change was never a problem maybe 10 years back. Now this is an issue. As you rightly mentioned, the new industrial policy or the requirement of water for semiconductor industries. If we are looking for being a manufacturing hub, if we are going for a 30 trillion economy, we need to change our policies accordingly, and that will definitely reflect on the water policy also. So it's not that a policy is lakir ka fakir, you made it stone cast, it has to change. Then public financing and private financing is a must. That again, government has been pushing it up. And one of the major transformation in the last couple of years had been the people's participation. So there's an increased people participation, and hopefully that this 2047 dream will be realized if people participation is here. And the last important one is about indigenization or using the Indian technology. Indian culture always had respected water. We had rivers as been recognized as mothers, and we worship them. Every puja, we have the water as the most important criteria. So but then unfortunately we have been copying West. And I can tell you the examples we have, how we have indigenized the business model as well as the ham model in Namamangege introduced by Rajan sir, and then modified later on to various success models. To business models have been evolved here. And let me tell you, sir, when we started copying the West, our climate conditions are different. Our temperatures are different from Europe. When you have the 20 degrees maximum or 15 degrees maximum, here we have minimum 30 degrees. So you can't have the same system working here. So we had indigenized our technology, and that's where the words like Nigeria and other African countries are looking after, because their conditions are similar. So indigenization is very important. Adapting to Indian technologies, Indian conditions are very important, and definitely the claim of Atmanirbhar Bharat is to develop our own technology, and we will do it. And last point, sir, CPR, as you mentioned, is an organization which we are trying to look for very critical policy research input. It's not implementation we are looking at it. These are by different bullet to bite, whether it is water governance, pricing, whether metering of water. These are all things which are the core essential of the policies. If you don't tell the politicians, like I mentioned, that there's a leader who listen and agree, willing to listen to the argument. We have to substantiate with proper research material. So that's where the CPR comes in, and I hope that CPR, with its wonderful history of giving policy directions to people, we will come up with policy items which would be helpful to the government, and hopefully that we will contribute to make these type of fundamental policy directions to the government. Thanks a lot, sir, again, for the wonderful talk here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ashok Kumar. Mr. Ashok Kumar, for those who haven't noticed, is a former DG and MCG. If you give him a chance, he would tell you about the Indian model of river rejuvenation, based on his experiences of implementing Namami Gange over the past 2 years. So just quickly, we are coming to the close. I think I don't have to tell you what kind of wisdom that we have received from Professor Biswas. He does ask a very provoking question about when such a fantastic experiences are there out in the world, both in advanced economies as well as underdeveloped economies, why can't India do it? And at the same time, he mentions that you need to look at context, and which is something that is reiterated by all the speakers here, Mr. Pandya, Cecilia, and Mr. Ashok Kumar. The context matters, and I'll just give you a simple example. India is a federal democracy with a history of colonial rule. And all those big questions that you're asking about, state subject, center subject, concurrent subjects, this history and this context has implications for it. I'll just give you a simple way, is that, India is one of the federal democracies where 36 federal constituents share 25 river basins. So it is interstate as well as center-state relations, and they are very complex, particularly because of the history of colonial rule. And if you look at any of those, disputes like Kaveri, Krishna, you go back to the roots in the colonial rule and the kind of iniquities that history has produced. Now that's the kind of shaping that history and this particular context, federal democratic context, has to talk about solutions for India. India is unique in every way. So that, I think, as you can see, that is what you need to take. While there are fantastic examples that you want to learn from all over the world, you need to be grounded to think about solutions for India. And that's the kind of spirit with which TREADS initiative would pursue its research program, and that's the same thing that I can tell you about CPR. And it is about deeply grounded within the social, political, and historical context, but looking at these solutions that keep coming from the external context critically. That's the job that we have. With that, I'll just thank you again for joining us, for staying so late. I see plenty of people. I think we have retained more than 80% of the people who were there in the beginning. That's a big achievement, even though we are past almost close to 45 minutes. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, profusely thank you, Professor Biswas, for spending time with us. And then please give a round of applause to other speakers too on the dais, Mr. Ashok Kumar, Mr. Pandya, and Cecilia. And then I need to thank my own team for making it such a huge success, this event. Thank you very much.